Hello. You guys all know me, but for the sake of everybody watching, I'm Ben Hatke. I make picture books and comics, and you guys do the same thing, as I well know. Do you guys want to tell me your names just for introductions really quick?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm Jenni, Holm, and I do the Baby Mouse series with my brother Matt, and I also have a new book called Sunny Side Up.
Which I just took my first look at yesterday, and it looks
is
cool.
Coming out from Scholastic Graphics in August. So.
Okay. I'll have a lot of questions about that.
Uh-oh.
And Raina?
And I'm Raina Telgemeier. I am probably best known for the books Smile and Sisters. I also did a book called Drama, and the recent book that I'm here to talk about is the Babysitters Club graphic novels, which are being republished in color for the first time.
Okay.
They originally came out in black and white in 2006, and now full color.
For some reason, I didn't realize that the originals were not in color. That's a surprise to me. I guess so.
Fascinating.
Jeff?
And I'm Jeff Smith. I draw the comic book Bone, the series, and yeah, what I'm slogging is 10 years ago, Graphics Scholastic launched an imprint just for graphic novels with Bone. So they've done a 10th anniversary tribute edition.
All right.
Special edition of it.
And I took a quick look at that, and like a lot of the tributes from other artists in the back are just really cool and fantastic. A lot of my artistic heroes have done pictures in the back.
Yes, there's some of my favorite cartoonists. In fact, one of my favorite ones is the one Raina did.
Yes,
it's a really good one.
I also liked Kate Beaton's. It was that was pretty cool. It was definitely her, but definitely.
Yeah, that was like the best
she kind of got roasted.
I've ever seen. Yeah.
So Jenni, you're the one who this is my first time meeting you right now today.
I know.
And I'm very familiar with Baby Mouse. I think my kids are very familiar with Baby Mouse as well. I think we've got some of those floating around in our massive comics at the house. But Sunny Side Up is, I'm not positive, but is this like your first comic that is autobiographical?
Yeah, so it's a little, so it's a departure for us. I mean, mostly from so I do the writing, and my younger brother Matt is the illustrator and the creator. And so this was new for us because he's used to drawing mice, and and so this is real people, humans. Yes. What should we do?
Challenge.
Exactly. But it's semi-autobiographical. We grew up in Pennsylvania and in the 70s, and it takes place during the summer of '76. So growing up outside of Valley Forge Park, like the bicentennial was huge. It was like this big thing. Like you couldn't get away from red, white, and blue, and the Liberty Bell.
Yes.
It was like ground zero for all of all of that. And it's about a girl who she actually spends part of the summer in Florida with her grandfather, who's at a retirement community. So, and it's like a little bit of a love letter to growing up with comics.
Right. And you say a girl. Is this girl Jenni? Is her name in the narrative?
No, it's Sunny. Her name's Sunny. So it's fictionalized.
Okay. And I saw in the middle of the book was a discussion about Batman and Superman and losing parents.
Yes.
And the commonality of tragic origins.
Yes, tragic origin stories. I mean, I came from a big family, and I have 4 brothers, and I'm the only girl. I was the middle child.
Okay.
So I grew up reading all of my brother's comics, and so it was fun reading them, and I was obsessed with cartoon strips and comics, but they all did have these tragic origin stories, and I thought one thing that always struck me was that they were never able to save those closest to them, even though they were heroes.
Right.
Across the board.
No, that seems.
We're actually over here enjoying and laughing at your book.
And exactly.
So
what's
Well, this is a little segment where Sunny is got a box of cereal.
Yeah.
And she's really focused on the surprise big toy inside.
Which was like a big thing in the 70s.
Yeah.
Oh, that was
I
huge.
totally remember.
Yeah.
And then she actually pulls it out, and a pack of Raleigh cigarettes comes out. In other words, Dad was hiding them in there.
Yes. He's trying to quit smoking.
What a surprise toy.
Exactly.
That's great. Wow.
So it was kind of fun to take a little trip down 70s memory lane.
Yeah. Look at a lot of old photos to get back into the.
We did, and you know what? We all had really bad haircuts in the 70s.
I still have a really bad haircut.
I grew up in the 80s, but I wore those collared shirts with the big stripes across the front.
Yeah, there's nothing embarrassing about that.
So Raina, you have the Babysitters Club coming back out now in color, but that you were working on the Babysitters Club before you did Smile, before you did some of the
Yes.
autobiographical stuff.
So in 2004 or so, Scholastic lured me in by saying, we're publishing Jeff Smith's Bone in color, and we'd like to publish other comics. So at the time they were looking for other people to work with, and at that point I was making mini comics, I was doing black and white stuff, I was making some web comics, and they asked me to pitch, and I pitched some of my original projects, but none of those things were really ready to go at the time.
Okay.
So David Saylor and I talked about the sorts of things I had liked to read as a kid. The Babysitters Club came up in conversation, and they were like, that's not a bad idea. Maybe we should do a graphic novel version of that. Okay. And a couple of weeks later, I had a contract for my first published work.
That's
and
so crazy.
It is crazy.
Cool.
It's super crazy.
A couple of weeks later.
And I mean, this guy was like my idol at the time. And, no, not at the time. Still to this day. But to be published alongside Jeff was such an honor. And the books were in black and white because Bone used to be in black and white. Actually, and I grew up on comic strips in the newspapers, and I didn't think anything of making black and white comics. And then a lot of things have happened since that first book was published in 2006, including Smile Sisters Drama being published in full color.
Yeah.
And Scholastic decided, let's do a re-release.
So can I ask you this question about what is it like to kind of be looking, like having this back in the spotlight and looking at work that you did kind of at the beginning of that part of your comics career? Like how's that?
It's kind of fun and kind of scary because my style evolved so much.
Right, that's kind of what I was wondering, yeah.
But I feel that my work had a looseness to it then that it doesn't have anymore. Possibly because I was only drawing for black and white. I didn't need to connect lines. I didn't need to think of what the colorist was going to do. So I don't know if you had something similar when you did the color version of Bone, if you had to strip out black spot.
The guy
or
Steve Hamaker, who did the color for me, was quite annoyed at how often I didn't connect the lines.
Yes.
He's like, can't you just connect the lines once? No.
It's just a different approach. It's a different approach to visuals, and I mean, I've learned a lot since then, but I also look back on work I did 10 years ago and go, gosh, it
holds up. It really does.
Thank you. And I don't want to say that myself,
but
I'm very proud of it still.
Yeah.
And
it makes sense for them to bring it back, too. It's like
that whole...
it's like the first couple of Beatles records didn't really take off until I Want to Hold Your Hand. You bet you they brought those first ones back. You've been like queen of the New York Times bestsellers chart for what, 2 years? 3 years?
You have the top four slots now. You've got the top four slots.
Top four slots.
Well, when this book was...
You are the Beatles.
You are comics.
Yeah, half the list
Raina.
was Raina. It was pretty exciting. But the visual language was there. Like the visual language, the same visual language you're using in Smile and Drama. I was definitely there. It's cool. I enjoyed seeing that. So, Jeff.
He's the bad boy that started this all.
Yeah, no, like I feel the same way that you do. Like where it's you're definitely inspirational.
Yes, I am old. That is true.
No, you are inspirational. And you're still doing new things. Like, because Bone was like 10 years that you worked on it.
It was 12 years, and
12 years. To tell the whole story.
My big idea was that I wanted to take traditional American cartoon characters like Big Nose, Three Fingers, Bigfoot, and mix it with the kind of the grown-up fantasy comics that were coming out of France at the time.
Right.
And heavy metal is how we see them. And I wanted to mix those up and tell an epic story with a beginning and a middle and an end, which was actually very radical at the time. There was nothing like that existed. And in fact, it was so radical that I had to keep it a secret for like the first 5 years or so, because I didn't want anybody to know I was doing a big story, because fantasy was really out of favor at the time, and Tolkien hadn't made his resurgence, and I didn't think anybody would buy it if they knew I was telling a big sword and sorcery type story. So I just focused on the humor and kept cliffhangers and kept people coming back.
Which is good because your comic timing is perfect. It's so great. But yeah, the story, like the whole series, it drifts further into serious high fantasy as you go.
Right.
really something else. So what's you've got the tribute edition now?
So the tribute edition is well, as I was doing the comics, the black and white self-published comics, it was all underground, and all the underground comics were black and white back then.
Yeah, it was the cool stuff.
Yeah, well, it was the cool stuff, and also we were all poor and couldn't afford color. So, but like what Raina said, I was a huge fan of newspaper strips like Pogo and Peanuts, and so I liked black and white. And Dick Tracy, Chester Gould used black so perfectly. So, but since it was one big story, it was very important that if, you know, I'm on issue 17, which is chapter 17 of this giant epic, it was very important that people would be able to get the first 16 chapters very cheaply and very easily.
Yeah.
And comic book stores were not set up to do that in the 90s. They, graphic novels were just kind of a misunderstood deluxe item, or like a one-off that was not meant to be kept in print, except for Mouse and Dark Knight and Watchmen. But there was nothing else except those three. So, and they were expensive. So me and my other self-publishing cronies, we decided to get on a campaign to do cheap, always available, always in print versions of graphic novels. And I had to have, Bone number 1 was worth $300 in the early days in the collector's markets.
Yeah.
Whoa. Well, if I wanted somebody to read chapter 1, they had to pay $300. So we kind of came up with this cheap paperback, always available, always in print model. And we got a lot of flack for it, but that was the early days of the graphic novel.
Did you invent the trade paperback?
No, I did not invent it. But I was the one that kind of got all the flack and kind of got the retailers to actually accept it and to restock it. Restocking was not an idea in comic book stores. It didn't.
They just sell.
Is this too inside baseball?
No, this is awesome. Actually,
I love it.
It is. So their model was to sell. Spider-Man was on the rack for 4 weeks. The new issue came out. That old issue came down, went into a long box, never to be seen again except by collectors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was just the model. They didn't sell them like music or even hardware, where if you sell out of an item, you restock it.
Yeah.
Right.
So the idea that you could have a library of a high-profit item that you could count on, reliably restock it, that was an extremely difficult concept for us to push through. And we got a lot of pushback from retailers and from like Wizard magazines at the time, whose whole goal was to say back issues are more valuable.
So you kind of pushed them into a bookstore model, basically.
We were pushing them
in a classic. Say this is a classic book that you always want to have on your shelf.
But I feel like in comics we're all now navigating the comics direct market model and the bookstore model, and we've all got like a foot in both those worlds.
Yeah.
It's something to navigate. So cool. Well, what else should we talk about here?
Well, let's talk about
Now that
you,
I've got
Ben.
on the couch.
Let's talk about you. You've got a brand new book out.
Can we put a little spotlight on Little Robot?
Yes, talk
I
about
suppose
Little
we could.
Robot.
It's a beautiful book, by the way.
Yeah, this is between. So I had done the 3 Zeta books. And
Love Zeta in our house.
Oh, good.
We're big Zeta fans.
But they're like big adventures. They're big space adventures. And then after the Zeta books, I did a picture book, Julia's House for Lost Creatures. And this is me kind of coming back to the graphic novel after having done this picture book, kind of applying some of the things like artistically and story-wise that I had learned. But this also started as a comic strip. It was me going back to the newspaper strip. While I was working on Zeta and while I was working on Julia, I had started this just for no reason at all, just to play. I was doing a strip about a little robot, and it grew into its own narrative, and it's really about this little girl and this robot and their like
so cute.
first experience of friendship, which is with each other, and then the things that kind of tear apart that first friendship, and yeah. So
that sounds good, and it's a gorgeous book. The pictures are really double-page spreads occasionally, and
yeah. Well, I took my sketchbook out and I drew this one instead of Zeta, which is in space in the places that are made up from my mind. This is. I'm in the Shenandoah Valley, so I just set it right there, and I took my sketchbook out, and some of the things are just scanned right out of my sketchbook and jiggled around a little bit digitally, but just straight out of sketchbook, so it's very much there.
I love the loose Like she's so the loose her dancing.
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. And
You give her like this little toddler body.
How did you resist not saying little robot?
I don't know if I'm a lil guy. I don't know. So, well, I think we're running out of time. So
Excellent.
this was awesome. Thank you guys. This was great.
Thanks, Ben.
This was actually a really enjoyable experience to be able to like ask you guys questions on the couch here.
Yay, BookCon.
Yay,
Book
BookCon.
Yay,